Yeah. Fun stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say that.
really.
Tons of fun.
Hmm.
Well,
Okay,
summer
we're
is
live.
officially over here. We've had a couple of nights below zero, so all the plants are wilted away.
Yep.
The frost is blowing them apart.
Yeah.
So
Brutal.
There we go.
joys of 53 degrees north latitude.
Just to let you guys know, I have found a replacement VA. So yeah, I'm going to go with Jessica. So she offered.
This is the same Jessica that you've been working on with those other things, correct?
Yep, exactly. So this just works even more seamlessly. So that's fine. So if you know how to take if anybody on this call knows how to take a Canva document um, and put it into Go High Level, so I can take um, my notes that I made up. Whoops, I admitted the wrong person. Approve, decline, note taker. I'll do that. And Patty's here.
Yes, I am so sorry. My watch was slow. I thought I had 5 minutes. So
No,
my apologies.
no worries.
So are we ready to get going?
We are now.
We are now. All right. Um, so
Jacqueline is here too. She's just off camera. So
Jacqueline is here, but off camera.
there, yeah,
Oh,
there.
there you are. Hey, Jackie. Shannon will be here in a minute, and Jane is not going to join us tonight. So,
Okay, no worries.
okay,
Okay.
right. Well, if you can put up that announcement poster.
Okay, just
Got it, Blair.
oh, thank you. Thank God.
Okay, awesome. This is something new we're trying. Welcome, welcome to the Blair Dunkley Experience. These are our announcements. We have podcasts of My Model Mastery Secrets on Monday and Thursday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We have My Model Minutes, which is another podcast, also available on YouTube. And you can get a free profiling session with Blair at the following linkedin.com/in/Blair Dunkley message profile.
Well, Blair Dunkley won.
Blair Dunkley 1. Okay, well, thank you.
Mhm.
Good help is so hard to find these days. So
Yes.
anyway, these are our announcements. We have more announcements at the end of our broadcast tonight, and I'm going to pass it to Colin.
Thank you, Patty. Welcome to the 366th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we discuss mind models. Today's episode is affectionately titled Anxiety's Favorite Game, The Endless Why Hole. But of course, none of us have ever been in a Y hole, so we don't have to worry about that. Mind models, if you're unfamiliar with them, are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally and hopefully stay out of those aforementioned Y holes. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of Mind Models. The BDE is Blair's free gift to you. It's an opportunity to learn, experience, and practice mind models in a safe, real world environment. My name is Colin Jewett, along with your co-hosts and certified mind model coaches Tim and Becky Graff and Patty McClure. And with that, we're going to kick it off. Tim, are you taking the reins at the beginning here?
Well, I'm gonna actually let my wife walk through a little bit of
Ah,
what leftovers. If you're joining us on YouTube, you may not be familiar if this is your first time. We've mentioned the why, and if you're not 100% sure what the why is, I'm gonna let my wife kind of explain a little bit more about the why before we get going. A little bit of leftovers from the last couple episodes.
All right. So why is a word that we use a lot. However, there is a trap involved when we use this. And the reason for that is whys, typically when we're using them, they generate reasons, excuses. They're 100% past-based. They load emotions first, and they lead to reliving, not remembering. So when we're using that in our vernacular and we're speaking about it, sometimes we can inadvertently keep ourselves stuck because we're not consciously aware of what the word choice, why specifically, is that we're using. And so we wanted to show this visual, and just again to share a little bit about what the why actually does. And then this next slide that I'm going to go to, let's see if I've got the correct one here, is just a little bit deeper on kind of where we want to move. So if why keeps us stuck, if it's in the past, if it loads emotion first and it's emotional and it's keeping us stuck in a trap, what do we want to do differently? And what we've been talking about for the last few episodes is shifting into what and how based questions, moving us from reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications into what might I do, more present based language moving forward. So what and how questions actually help you do that. They're present based, they're action oriented, and they can help move you forward. And as we've been talking and discussing about the why hole and why it matters for us to actually talk about that. So we've been talking about some maybe escape plans or different things that you can utilize to get yourself out of the why hole. And that is, which one? 6. All right. This is, I'm gonna let Tim talk about this because this actually was born from his own flow of kind of how to get out of a why when you're there.
So yeah, one of the things that we talked about, it was 2 episodes ago, was our inoculation process. And it's a series of questions that you can walk yourself through to get out of a why state. When you find yourself overloaded with the emotions, or when you can feel the emotions coming on, it helps to ask yourself, and this was actually, I got to give credit to Jackie, because this, I had another
Jackie.
question. It was a what-based question that I was asking, and sometimes it wasn't quite doing the trick. I found myself in a disguised why, as we love to lovingly call it here at the Blair Dunkley Experience. I was actually asking a why question, just using the what word. And so I found that the what, when I asked myself what, it wasn't always the most effective shift. And Jacqueline happened to bring this question to the BDE a little bit ago and absolutely loved it. And it's worked a lot more effective than just asking the what, but it's asking that question first of where am I? And that's more of a discovery type question. Where, am I in the past? Am I looking in the present? Like, where am I in this situation? Because that helps you kind of check where you're at and it brings you into the present. Then you can ask, who is in the why? Is there another person that happens to be in a why state and they're wanting to bring you into it? Are you in the why state? And then you can ask, how do you know what's coming up? Those kinds of things to help you stay in that information part of your brain instead of going into the why yourself. Also asking questions like, what's going on? What can I control? Just kind of getting your bearings in that traction in the moment of what is going on in the situation if you're working with another person or yourself. And then I ask the check-in question, where am I now? And this is that update. If I was in the past, if I was in the why, am I now present? Is this bringing me into the present moment? Also, am I internal? Am I looking for those external things? And then if you need to, you can go into the when, like when did this thing happen? Was it past? Is it happening now? Am I reliving it right now in the moment? Or, is this something that is way behind me that I don't necessarily need to relive? And then how might I move forward in the moment right now? What action can I take to move myself forward? And so we don't necessarily have to use all the questions, even just a few of these. If you can ask just a couple simple questions, this is a process that I kind of go through, and it goes through so quickly when you go through it. And the more you go through it, more practice, easier it becomes. But it's just kind of a thought framework to help bring yourself present and help work out of the emotions into that informational center.
And again, if you want to go deeper into any of what we're talking about, these have been our past episodes, episode 362, 363, 364,
Yep.
365, and then today's 366. So if you want to go deeper into these, again, our lovely experience here, the Blair Dunkley experience is 90 minutes, but we can only cover so much. So we want to do a quick gloss over what we've been chatting about. So you have that kind of moving in today's episode. One last one we want to cover, that was the inoculation process. But this one right here is the escape plan. So we talk about getting aware. So one of our mind models that we use is called the NANPU. So awareness, notice, process, understand. And this is an opportunity for you to kind of check into yourself. What are some of those internal cues that you're experiencing? And then get perspective. We can use the mind model SOS, which is self, other, situation, to separate yourself, other, and the situation. Identify maybe what your role is, what's going on, as Tim mentioned, as you walked through the inoculation process. And then the mind model 3 E's to get effective. To be able to, again, identify what you might do differently, what's working about the situation, and those pieces. So again, wanted to give you a brief overview. Anything else, Blair, you would like to add, or Patty or Colin, to this before we move into today's episode?
No,
Other than I'm just adding to our closing slide. One of the things that is now set as a date, which is going to be some more training, so mind model method coach training, and that's going to be on the closing slide. So
Okay.
you guys can know where and, well, partially where we've got the right state picked, and we're planning on doing that. So stay until the end, and we've got some cool announcements.
All right.
Awesome. That's
Fantastic.
exciting.
All right. So with that, I'm going to stop share, and we are going to go into tonight's episode, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tim.
Hey, Zach. Well, welcome. Great to see you.
And
Shannon and Shane.
Shane, Shannon, and Zach.
Shane,
Have you on.
Shane, Shannon, Zach. Mouthful. Great to have you guys on. So last week we went over procrastination. Becky and I actually weren't here. Was there anything that we needed to bring up with that, Patty, that we needed to cover by chance?
I don't
Moving
think so.
to this week's episode.
I think
Okay.
we're ready to move on.
Okay, awesome. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't something that needed to be mentioned. This week we were actually talking about, as Colin mentioned earlier, we're talking about why and how it works with anxiety. So I have a question for the group, and I'm actually going to ask Zach, since you have your mic open, Zach. I'm going to ask you, what is anxiety?
Well, my mic has a mute button on it. So it's just easier to do this than Zoom. Now I know better. I need to have the Zoom one on so that I don't get called out. I see anxiety. I actually heard I went to this event by a guy named Myron Golden. He does more traditional mindset type stuff. But he had some pretty cool insights in terms of the difference between anxiety and fear that I found helpful. And it was more or less, anxiety is kind of it's a paralysis feeling. It's a feeling of paralysis, like being stuck. And he also compared anxiety with anticipation as being kind of its opposite. And the way I understood it is they both stem from, and you guys can definitely correct me on this part because I don't know about this part with my models, but they both stem from a certain belief. So one is kind of the belief of faith, like good things, and the other one's a belief of doubt. But they're both like, so doubt leads to anxiety, paralysis, that kind of thing. Faith leads to anticipation and moving forward. And so I found that to be pretty insightful. And fear, on the other hand, is like legitimately unsafe. Like you're at gunpoint kind of thing. Like that's a fear. So I don't know how accurate that is, but that's it was a really fascinating talk and lecture that I enjoyed.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. And honestly, I love that you brought up the belief part of it because we'll actually, as we go through this over the next day, maybe two, because there's a lot of information here. We'll see how the day goes, or how this next 90 minutes goes, rather. But we'll get into a bit of the belief part of it and how that plays a role here.
Mhm.
So sorry, Patty lovingly has put in, she has put in the definition of anxiety, and want to just share this really quick with the group. Um, it's Latin and it means anxietus, from anxious, solicitous, Latin ango, to primary sense is to press, to squeeze, to make narrow, which I think you actually mentioned, Zach, or to kind of strangle. And so it's a concern which disturbs the mind and keeps it in a state of painful uneasiness. And so much as you kind of described, it's that state of almost smothering instead of, on the opposite fear of it, where it's a little bit more of that safety concern. So I want to bring up another question here. And I'm going to actually throw this to Brent. What does anxiety feel like? What does anxiety feel like to you, Brent?
Or have you ever experienced anxiety?
Yeah.
Yeah, I maybe not in an extreme sense where it's crippling, there it's like holds people back that it really holds on to, but anxious times of anticipation where I had those, for sure. Have had it, of what's coming, knowing it's coming and there's nothing I can do to stop it, but until it happens. The only thing I can think of, it's the most common for me with sports. You prepare and then it's game day right before the game, and then you get a little anxious because you're anticipating something, but you don't know what's coming. You prepared, but you're not really sure because it's still new. So you prepared based off of what's from the past that you knew you had information from to prepare, but there's always the unknown. You don't have it there in the present, and this is now, and there's new things coming, but you don't know what they are.
Mhm.
Is there a certain area in your body that you feel this? Did you?
Physically. So physically spot like where feel it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Let's see. See if I can point that. I would say I feel it in my head, my chest, like a tightness, in the midsection. So in the chest and maybe the abdomen. If you get a really anxious or nervous, you can get, sick. You like a sick feeling. And some people I've seen vomit. They'll vomit, right there and get back right up. And I'm like, oh, I haven't actually finished that, but I've gotten to a point once it's like, oh, it's right there. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, it's really something interesting to experience. I've done it I've experienced one time that's happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I must really be unprepared for what's going to, for where I put myself in the situation. So, but yeah, that was something to experience. But yeah, usually in my head and then like the chest, the upper part of the body, tightness, everything starts to begin a little tight, like you're explaining, 'cause it's like a constriction.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's funny too that you mentioned that because I've been privy to this. I've seen it from Becky. We've gone into certain situations where we spoke and those kinds of things, and all of a sudden she's like going, "I feel nauseous. I'm going to throw up."
Mm.
And I remember one time in particular that I asked her, but she's like, I'm gonna throw up. I need to throw up. And I'm like, but do you?
I was really mad when he asked me that because it challenged. Not that I wanted to, but like my process was dialed in. I knew that the alleviation of that, like that part of it, the anxiety would decrease because physically I did something. Um, Leslie, you were looking very thoughtful. I'd love to know what's coming up for you right now.
Yeah, well, Saturday here was not a good day. Um, we were having the family over for Thanksgiving dinner. We get to celebrate earlier here in Canada.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yesterday,
So
Blair.
I was in the kitchen and getting supper ready for everything. And I got a text message from my previous employer advising me that a very key person to me when I was working there had passed away.
Hmm.
And I was the third one within a couple of days of people that we knew that had passed away. But this one hit me. And I just, yeah, anxiety fell into place and was in my head. And I just became immobilized. I couldn't do anything. Um, so my dear, beautiful wife took over in cooking and got everything going. And I just ended up sitting there, but still talking with family and shared with them what had happened. But um, I wasn't, uh, I wasn't in the best of shape. Um, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, more than 2 years ago, um, I would have been a basket case for probably a week or more. Um, Before the evening was over, I was in a much better place already. I'd made some decisions about this. One of them is that it means traveling to another city for if I were to go to that funeral. But I chose not. I'm not going to that funeral simply because the uh, that situation would put me back being there and seeing some of the people that had caused me so much grief and stress for such a long period of time. I know would be there, and I chose that no, I'm not going to go because I'm not going to put myself in that position where um, I will become anxious again, extremely anxious. And I don't need that. So there was a choice. There was naming and labeling. Um, it just felt good and it hasn't bothered me a bit since then. So,
Leslie, I got to give you kudos on this because,
Yeah.
like, you're walking through an evaluation process like you, a couple of years ago, this would not be possible.
that
And
would not be me.
that would, yeah. And now look at you. Whoa, that's so effective.
It is. Thank you, Blair.
You're welcome.
And
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Leslie, for your generosity and spirit and sharing with us because
Yeah,
I think
really.
it highlights just what's possible with mind models, specifically in what I heard was that you felt this anxiousness, you had the feelings come up, but you directly dropped into naming and labeling and evaluation, as Blair mentioned. What did you notice happen with the anxiety for you when you made the choices that you did?
Yeah.
Uh, well, I was totally exhausted, but the physical elements had gone, had disappeared.
Awesome. And were they
Yeah, the
replaced?
physical stress,
Was it
yeah,
replaced with something different?
sorry,
Was it replaced with something different?
acceptance.
Okay.
Um, I'm still an emotional person and I'm still sad that this person has passed away,
Sure.
but no,
So
much
just
different.
I'd like to share, if I may, kind of what's coming up for me and what I'm hearing from you, Leslie, is I'm also hearing you setting boundaries and also self-other situation plays a big
Yeah.
role in what you're talking about. taking a look at yourself and how that plays with the situation and the others involved. And those are some other mind models that I'm hearing that were a big part of you choosing and walking through that process. So yeah, well done.
Yes. Thank you.
As well as effective versus ineffective, plus external versus internal. So all of the three E's were there. SOS, self-other situation, is there. Like, your whole thing of going into acceptance and acceptance of self, even with the emotions, and relive versus remember. You're definitely into
Oh,
remember, not into reliving.
yeah.
Crap. Good job.
Yeah.
We had talked, my dear wife and I had talked about it, and she actually said tonight that she was worried about me when that had happened, and it was definitely um, recognizing that I was reliving years of hell
Yep.
in that short period of time, and in making the decision, it was switching it the whole thing to remembering, and I'm just trying to think Patty, at one time, a couple of years ago, I think you talked a lot about reliving and remembering.
Yep.
I remember someone going through that much more extensive. I know we talked about it again recently, and it's been popping up, but it really came through.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, Leslie. And I think this kind of your question, I'm going to transition just a little bit. Zach, you asked in the chat,
Yeah, I was gonna. Yep.
how can we tell the difference between anxiety versus worry versus nervousness? Or is there really a difference? Blair, love your thoughts on this, my friend.
No worries. I'm here. I think, I got set up for this question perfectly. And Leslie, if I may use what you've just shared as an ability to give people a very real-time differentiation. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff, Leslie. You're sort of the de facto expert because I'll be using you as examples. And if you don't think it's right, jump in and fill me in on your stuff. Sorry, just eyelash in my eye there. Anyway, so anxiety. Anxiety is sort of what you shared initially of how you reacted. You were the first thing, it was like pressure, it was in your body. You described things physiologically and whatnot to start off with. You said that this is the third one. It was like your head was down, it was there. Um, and that was a very rapid snapshot of what could have been a prolonged anxious period, like days or maybe a week or so, but it wasn't. It didn't happen. But it was like a rapid little expression of, oh, I'm in anxiety. This is a sense of anxiousness. But you went to very quickly into um, worry, but worry like, am I going to stay stuck here? Am I going to be here? Concerned about that. And I'd throw in the word, Zach, I'd also throw in worry and concern in here. But again, by you starting to name and label, and you said you were naming and labeling, and all of a sudden, when you were talking about naming and labeling, your tone started picking up slightly and you started seeing it as you were, by naming and labeling what's going on, you seem to um, express power over the emotional information that you were given, and you now were sort of starting to reclaim the power over yourself. And and by naming and labeling it and starting to see it and then apply the mind models to this, you started to build a process of you being able to shift yourself. And it was externally verifiable. Honestly, you could hear your tone go from down here to your head came up, and you started raising up as well, like just literally rising up in your head, your chin, everything would sort of rise up there, and you would come into a place where you had a concern about it, where you could argue, well, you were somewhat nervous, but you kept on going with more of the mind models, naming and labeling what was going on. And then we all started, well, I started chiming in because I was so impressed with what you were doing. I thought that was incredibly effective. And I go, and you just, sort of brought yourself up, and even the nervousness was dissipating. Yeah,
it wasn't an immediate process. Let's see, I found out about 3 o'clock. The family showed up at 3:30 and it wasn't until maybe after 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock that evening where I had resolved and put this together. So
Yeah,
Wow.
but I'm not talking about that process. I'm talking about the process of remembering it here and walking us through.
I see.
Those were
Okay.
all the snapshots that you gave us physiologically right here based on your timeline, the 6 hours from 3 till 9.
Okay. Yeah.
And um, let me ask you a question. Being able to go through that in 6 hours, even with people around, how effective was that for you?
Very,
Did
very
you hear
effective.
yourself say how you just said very?
It
Like,
was
okay, like
it
listen
was
to the
definitive
tone.
and
Sorry.
it was definitive.
It was extremely definitive, and now you're laughing at yourself when I'm making you, hey, consciously go, yeah, right. No, I am. It's definitive. It's this, it's this. Look at, like, that is the thing that is so powerful and effective for you because you now know you know. This isn't up for debate. There is no
No,
debate here. You did it, and it was like you said, it's definitive.
Yeah,
yeah.
and actually, if I may, real quick, Colin just put a comment in there. I'd actually like you to share, Colin, if you don't mind.
Would you expound on that, please?
Yes.
Sure, now that I've had a chance to write my own script for myself and read it off. Yeah, and Blair just went through several of these things, but I was externally processing as I do, that I would share it there. But I was just walking back through what Leslie had said because it was a brilliant, like there were so many pieces in what you shared, Leslie. And I was noticing you had the opportunity to get stuck in a past future loop, which is what anxiety is, reliving the years of hell as you described them, projecting that into that future, into the funeral. And that's where you could have just gone stuck forever. Like Blair said, that could have just been where you ended up trapped. And you mentioned like you could have been a basket case for a week or who knows how long. But one thing that you said that really stood out to me was that you made a decision. And that's a case in which the mind model choice versus decision, the decision side is actually very effective if you're in a situation in which your brain is generating overwhelming possibilities, which is often what happens in anxiety. And a decision allows you to move out of analysis paralysis and just move forward. And you made a decision which required you to get present. And then you moved into acceptance, which you said. You allowed yourself to feel what you were feeling, noticing it. And what's also brilliant, which Blair was just saying, so I'm repeating him, but the fact that you identified that whole process that you went through and that you were noticing it and anchoring your wins. So cool. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And that I think is a really beautiful way. And again, Colin, thank you so much for sharing that step by step, and you, Leslie and Blair, because one of the questions is what is the pathway out of anxiety? And it really is creating those, in your case, Leslie, a decision and then a bunch of micro choices, right? All along the way, sprinkled throughout of it so that you could get power over your anxiety and start to move within the naming and labeling, describing feelings and those things. I'm curious, Colin, if you wouldn't mind to kind of go a little bit deeper in what you shared with us on prep as far as
The breathing techniques,
and like when
bringing
you're in
it
that
external.
when you're in that frozen space. You talked a little bit about making the decision and how come that's so effective in this space. But would you
Mhm.
mind talking a little bit more about micro choices in IBER and how that might look?
Yeah, so you mentioned several different things there, but I'll share like the breathing technique, and this kind of works into a Nanpu too. Just when you have that awareness, uh, and you're able to then notice that you're experiencing some symptoms of anxiety, or just that your nervous system seems to be a little elevated. If your sympathetic nervous system is getting that tone, that edge to it, and you feel things rising up, you feel a stress response rising. If that's something that you want to regulate, based on best available research, the fastest way to like take the edge off or help to stall that process and engage your parasympathetic nervous system, bring things down. It's called a physiological sigh. And I do this several times a day. So I invite you to join me if you want to take one now. Basically, the way it works is just taking a deep breath in through the nose and trying to fill up all the space that you can with that breath, using your diaphragm, filling up your belly, filling up your chest, filling up your head, whatever, filling all the space you can through the nose. And then when you get to the top, trying to take another sharp inhale through the nose because there's always just that little extra space. And then when you breathe out through the mouth, just kind of allowing your whole body to relax into that exhale. And so all together it looks like this. And I've noticed that after about just two of those, usually for me, usually after two, um, it it's like the first one kind of stops the upward progression, and the second one starts the reverse process of kind of coming back down. That's very useful to like catch things before they spiral out of control, or if they already kind of are, to like get that little handhold that you need to climb back. One little extra tidbit to this that I found to be really helpful, especially if you're dealing with grief or just really overwhelming emotion, is engaging your vocal cords on the sigh, on the out breath. Something about engaging the vocal cords and getting that vibration, and just allowing yourself to get that. It's almost like this animal guttural, like it can really allow for an emotional release if that's what you need. So, yeah, that's the breath. Becky, did you have other specific questions related to, you mentioned IBER and micro choices, and I don't know how
Oh,
far we want to go down that rabbit hole.
that's great. I'd like to check in with people. Thank you so much, Colin. That is a very powerful, simple, whip it out of your back pocket in any moment kind of utility tool. Sitting in your car, Tim can attest that I do breathing often. Yep. Because it's something that can be helpful in, again, as you mentioned, bringing that down and getting centered. So I'm curious.
I just have a little something to add to this because we're talking about micro choices. And I was in my group this morning. Every morning I'm in a men's, well, it happens to be all men. It's called Committed Coaches. And so I do that. And one of the guys, Dr. Kayvon, he's a medical doctor who's now a management consultant, but was sharing about choice. And it's stuff that I've gone through years ago, in fact, decades ago, and the power of choice. Decision is good, but decision can, in some cases, paralyze. When you make a decision, it, it's not quite as fluid as choice. But with choice, the second that you choose, change has occurred. And, and we were talking about how choice is change. And change doesn't take time. Change is instantaneous. Change is like hot knife through butter. It goes and zip. And it's changed. Life has changed. They are micro, though. They're small, but they're irrevocable. So they go. Whereas decisions, we hold them in differently in our mind, and sometimes we can go back and change our mind to make a different decision. And in that way, it's a bit of not quite committing to change because we can take it back, but choice we rarely take back. Choice we've we I don't know, I cannot recall a time where I've seen anybody or I've unchosen something and say, no, I don't choose decisions. No, I've done that before. But choices is different. It's a different beast. And it's more of me and more of me being empowered. And Leslie, your story that of your description was to me all about choice and how you were choosing to be and how you use the mind models that you chose to reinforce and give yourself externally verifiable, testable evidence of what you were doing so the choices could be reinforced virtually instantaneously and be externally verifiable. Now, it took 6 hours from 3 to 9, but it didn't take you a week or days. It took you hours. And while you were having social interactions to boot, that's pretty powerful, if you ask me. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. That's all.
Well, Blair,
Yes.
this is a really good example of something that you've said before, which is how using my models compress time.
Yes.
And so my models are not, I mean, we talk about our inoculation and this kind of process, but my models don't keep things from happening to you. They don't keep feelings and experiences and life from happening, but they do allow you to process it in a compressed way so that, Leslie, it was so exciting because I know how you have fought for this place that you're in right now in terms of the skills and faithfully learning and attending every week and growing. It's really huge. And to work through all of that, yeah, to work through all of that in 6 hours is truly remarkable. And the the choices that you made and the process that you used, very effective. But again, my models compress time. They don't keep things from happening. They compress time. So we can get out of these hard places so much faster using the mind models.
Yep. Yep. Like
The
It's
other
that.
thing, the other thing about mind models is that they layer. They
Mm.
kind of layer and stack.
Mhm.
So, Leslie, when you started with your naming and labeling, it led you to another place, which led you to another place, and stacking them, layering them one on top of the other, created a path out of anxiety for you. And that's part of what Tim shared in the beginning and what Becky frequently shares is the path out is this layered process um, of these little choices that, okay, what am I doing now? Where am I right now? What can I do? Starting with naming and labeling takes you someplace. Starting with where am I takes you someplace. And they just inch you forward until all of a sudden you're in a new place.
That brings me to another point. I had a client this morning, and he's also seeing a therapist, which is fine, no issues. But the therapy is basically just talk therapy. And so just venting, whatnot. Um, he was dealing with a relationship issue, but something that also spins off into his work. And he wound up, um, actually, I've seen this a ton at life skills colleges where a person goes into a situation and they actually are so sympathetic towards that other person that they take on the emotion of the other person, but it's not their emotion. In fact, I've seen students at Life Skills College who literally are crying because they're not, they are obviously in pain. And I was going to say claiming to be, but they are in pain because they are taking on the pain of somebody else who talked about their pain when they were 5. And now this pain, this other person, this third party was not, never knew this person before, is now in tears regarding the pain that they are feeling, and they are now really hurting. But that's sympathetic, taking that situation and wearing it as their own. And that is one of the situations that was causing them a great deal of issue because they can't go and talk to somebody who they actually want to support without feeling their feelings. But when you teach people how to describe their own feelings, and you get them to be able to identify what they are feeling towards that person, like care and concern, compassion, those things are legitimate emotions that you're having towards that person who's sharing the pains that they've had. And those are very present. But when they don't know the difference of what sympathy and empathy is, and they go into sympathetic, like it is so critical to discern who owns the problem. Like,
So,
whose emotions are these? Are these my emotions, or am I taking on and using my neurons, which are called mirror neurons in your brain, where you're mirroring the other person and their emotion, and you feel their feelings? But you're now going beyond that and not knowing where that differentiation is, and the anxiety that comes with the situation of everything that that person has gone through now becomes yours. But you didn't go through that situation, yet you're legitimately behaving, feeling, having all of those emotions as though it is yours. But without differentiating their experience from your re-experiencing and reliving, in fact, imaginatively, using your imagination to create a scenario where you are accidentally reliving somebody else's life. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, Blair, I just wanted to throw in here. I had a call just the other day. I was in a very calm, peaceful, playful state, and I get on this call, and it was someone I had done some business with, and this person was extremely anxious, very stressed. And they got on the call and immediately started blaming me for things and
Yep.
throwing accusations at me and all this stuff. And then they were super rushed and they were doing something else at the same time. We were supposed to talk for 30 minutes, but it ended up being 8 minutes because they had so much going on and it was just unbelievable. And their world was in chaos and it was my fault and it was someone else's fault. It was all these things.
Yep.
Just this tidal wave hit me of all the emotions that this person was feeling. And in just 8 minutes, I went from that calm state to feeling like what just happened. I feel like I just got put through like a washing machine and got
Yeah.
thrown a bunch of times. But what was also really cool is even when that was happening, I was noticing while I was on the call, I was like, oh, like my nervous system is getting engaged and I'm aware of it as it's happening, and that's understandable, and I accept that that's happening. And then right after the call, I just closed my eyes, and it was like the emotions kind of popped up in front of me. I was like, okay, which ones of these are mine, and which ones of these did
Exactly.
this person bring? And it was like, oh, well, they all came from them. It's like, okay, thank you for sharing the information that you brought to me, and now you're free to go. And then they
Yep.
kind of drifted off, and my nervous system came back down, and then I was kind of like, oh, that was interesting, and reset. And it was like that was all definitely mind model work, the ability to just describe feelings and then also ask the question, who owns these? Who do these belong to? Where did they come from?
Yep.
And separate that out and practice acceptance.
Absolutely. Like that mind model of acceptance, when we did that, well, that little episode, that was huge. It's so critical to be able to identify. The naming and labeling of things are so fundamental, and you lose power over yourself if you over identify with somebody else. But you also lose power over yourself if you don't identify your own. Like, and you've got to discern the difference. And that discernment is critical. And with anxiety, it's absolutely essential because it's boundless if you don't put boundaries on it. And Becky was sharing with Leslie how he was managing his boundaries so effectively. And I concur with that. Like, that's huge. That was huge, Leslie, very effective. And you too, Colin, because you just demonstrated, hold it, all of this wave of emotion. Let me just take a moment here and sort of what's mine, what's theirs. Oh, thank you very much for showing up. I'll let you go. Like, this isn't mine. I don't have to carry this. And that's just fine. I like doing it from the perspective of trying to be in the moment compassionate. Because when I'm compassionate, I'm okay, they're not okay, and I can demonstrate care and concern towards them. But the minute that they're gone, I can have a lingering sense of concern, but not worry, not frustration, not whatever, just some level of reasonableness to the concern. At least for me, it's reasonable, and just letting all of that stuff dissipate um, quickly with time.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can't do, is there anything that I can do about it? And one of the things that I did with my client today was taught him about hanging up his emotions because like whose emotions are these? Are they his or somebody else's? And if it's somebody else's, does he need to wear them right now or can he park them? And at Life Skills, when I was going through with all of this stuff we used to do an exercise, I used to whip out my car keys and hand this off to somebody who was actually very agitated about making sure that everything is done that's possibly done in that. And I said, okay, you find all the locks in here and you go and check if any of these keys work in them so we know which key we have to deal with. And I knew because they were my keys, none of the locks would be effective. There was no place for them to use anything. But I go, okay, so these are keys, though. They're supposed to unlock things or lock things, right? Well, yeah, but they don't work in any of these locks. Right there, the person tested and got themselves to the present. They don't work here. But I need these because I can't get home because, the person said, these are car keys. You're right. They are car keys. They're my car keys. So if I go downstairs in the parking lot, I will need them. And I will need them to get home from work. Great. So but I want to hang them up. And by hanging them up, in this case, it's metaphorically hanging them up. But for me, I want to put them in my pocket so I can know personally where to put these things safely, where I can put them in my pocket. And I now know that I have them, but I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to have any any anxiousness or worry or nervousness because I know. And that's what naming and labeling did with Leslie. He knew, and he could work it through. It's like you knew as well, Colin, in your situation, you named and labeled what's yours, what's not yours, accepted what's yours, and let the rest go. And so you put it where it was needed. And in some cases, you don't need to do anything with it. You can just let it go. Other times, it's like those car keys of mine. I need to put it in a safe spot because when I need it, I'll need it.
Yep.
So that differentiation of hanging things up till utilized is one of the things that people don't engage frequently with that sense of anxiety, worry, and nervousness. They don't find a safe spot, a a spot where they know that that situation is. And so they take nervousness, turn it into worry, then amplify it into anxiety frequently. So
And I
Zach,
love what you're, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say Zach.
Oh.
I noticed Shane brought his thing up, and I'm trying to jam Shane and Zach into one word, one name. So
We do look alike, so
yeah,
it
right.
works.
Yes. Zach, does that help you with your question?
What was my question again? I'm just
Your
kidding.
question was anxiety,
Yes, it
worry,
does.
and nervousness. What's the difference?
Yes. Yes, it
Okay.
does. And I've been taking notes furiously over here.
Okay, good.
Shane, would you like to share what you put in the chat?
Yeah, I
I'm
need to make a phone call to the neighbor to line up trucks for tomorrow. But yeah, so I'm gonna have to. I'll keep you on in the background, but I'm gonna have to. I'll get off camera. But I use the power choice in a couple situations, like last weekend moving cows. Had a couple hiccups in the rounding up the first bunch. The neighbor that was helping us, her Ranger quit working or broke down in the corner, and just kind of one of them. What's going on? Where like you should have been here a long time ago. Blah blah blah. But anyway, I chose not to let it stress out. We got him moved, or even affect the rest of the day. It went pretty smoothly. So my takeaway for today is the micro choices that Blair mentioned, and getting to the present. Colin's controlled breathing will be something to implement, and then the mind models I use during anxiety are self other situation, the power of choice, and real versus reality. So
Yeah,
the super quick wrap up. So, but
there we go.
Thank
always
you.
appreciate you guys.
You
So
betcha.
talk
Thanks,
to you
Shane.
soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Shane.
I loved as you were talking about those pieces, Blair, that, just highlights the fact that anxiety is really pretty general. It's this felt sense, it's this thing. And it's not really specific other than it can literally take the wind out of your sails. It can be trapping, it can feel suffocating and all those things. But the specificity, the curiosity that's engaged about what's going on, whose is this to own, those pieces can really help. And one thing I wanted to highlight real quick, and I think that we're just about into the place where we might transition to wrap up, is how our brain processes what we perceive as a threat, internal or external. Like our brain is the perception of what our brain is doing is really the piece that we need to take a look at. And when you're thinking through, Blair, what came up for me is like with the key situation, you gave that person an opportunity to test in the real world so that they could have invented, like, I know what keys are, I know what they do. And so they could actually have something grounded in the present to actually test. So when we're thinking about all the different ways and places that anxiety show up, socially, situationally, triggers PTSD, like all those things may have something new, something out of our comfort zone. I know for me, like I get hit with a wave of anxiety when somebody asks me to do something and I'm not prepped for it, like, oh, that was left field. Like there's a sensation of, okay, now what do I do? But the ability to use the mind models and drop into a testing space or to recall, like, okay, was there a time when I was in a similar situation and what was the outcome? Evaluation. What did I do? What was the outcome of that? Back when you were okay. And Blair, if you wouldn't mind recounting, because I think this is applicable here, like the whole counting process. When
Yeah.
you're dealing like Colin talked a lot about breathing, but I think another powerful one is the counting protocol that that you've shared before, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So, when you're going through an anxious spot, one of the things, and I have to be not stress-free by a long shot with the breathing thing, but I've got to be aware enough to be able to do it. And sometimes I can't quite make myself breathe other than almost like hyperventilating breathe. And so like I want to just go that kind of breathing, not the slow like in and then take another breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. That has I've been in a couple of situations decades ago, but I remember these very specifically, knowing that that wasn't effective. But the counting one was. And the counting one is simply this. You get yourself into a place where you go, am I okay right now? Like right now, this very second, am I okay? Enough. And then go, yes, okay, I am. Great. Count to three and do it out loud. And it's one, two, three. Don't do one, two, three, because that's adding that extra pace to it, adds tension. So it's got to be slower. And you have to do like a beat, a one and a two and a three, but you don't have to say the ands. But one, two, three. Am I okay right now? And I look around, or I have people look around, or I make myself turn my head to the left, turn my head to the right, and see, is this now okay? Am I physically in a safe enough spot? And I go, yeah, I am. I'm safe. And then I do it again. Okay, but this time I count to five. One, two, three, four, five. Look around. Are you safe? Yes, I am. Great. And then do a count to 10. And I won't do it, but a slow count to 10, then a slow count if you need it more. Pardon me, hiccup there. And 1 to 15 and then 1 to 20. And I've never had any client or anybody ever needing to go past 20 just to calm themselves down. And all of a sudden they've brought themselves back and they're present because just the act of counting holds them present and they are testing their environment. They're looking around. And when I've done it with my daughters back in the day, just having them run around, like open the closet door, make sure everything's there, or I open the closet door for them, make sure there's no monsters there or under the bed or whatever. It's all safe. But then having them count. And then the next time I take them by the hand and I protect them, they can be behind me, but I'll open the closet door to make sure that then have them look in and there's no monsters in there. So it's about getting back to the present and out of their mind where they're confabulating or making this horror situation happen. Not saying it's not real for them. It was very real for me. Um, yeah, just heart pounding, everything. But getting myself present, that is the key.
Thank you for sharing that, Blair. Again, some very powerful, utilizable tools in addition to the mind models we've discussed tonight to help you start getting a foothold in those moments where you're feeling anxiety. We had a whole lot more to cover, and just curious if anybody is interested in potentially going an extra week on this, talking about emotional dysregulation. Shannon says yes, and some of the other deeper pieces. Couple of votes.
Leslie, Colin, and Brent said
Okay.
yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll save the rest of what we didn't cover for next week if that works for you guys. And I think we're in a position to transition into wrap up, unless anybody else has anything before we do that.
Hand it off to Colin.
Thank you. Yeah, so special wrap-up question today, added into your wrap up if you'd like, would be to name one time when you overcame anxiety and the mind models were helpful to you when you did it. Whether you knew you were using a mind model at the time or you only recognize it retroactively, either one is okay. And with that, Leslie, would you like to kick off the wrap up tonight?
Sure, thank you. I think I answered the question already.
So,
Um, Tonight is definitely a 10. Um, or more. Thank you for um, confirming the thoughts that I had and things that I did and working through what I was talking about. It just, you're, all the comments were just reinforcing, um, again, um, repeatable, duplicatable,
Identifiable.
identifiable, reliable.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the only thing I can add is that during those 6 hours I had, it was my family that was here. Lots of grandkids, so got and children. So there was lots of hugs received, which helped get through it all too.
Mhm.
So love is great. Thank you.
amen to that. Thank you, Leslie. Brent, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yes, I'll participate. Thank you. Um, I gotta say, I do a little bit of updating tonight. So I think I earlier I had like a display when I had times I had anxiety, but it was more of a more nervous than anxious. But there was still a little bit of anxious there, but it was more nervousness that you can't like the some of the body feelings are tense, like getting to that point. I did have some of that, but a lot of that what I was explaining was more nervousness than that. But I did have anxiousness like during season for football. It was during the week, it was a lot of the thoughts, can I perform? Am I still going to be able to do, can I do this? Am I going to mess up? Those type of things. So that was every week. It was that same thing the entire week. So didn't matter if it was new team, whatever. That was what was going on. So that whole week, but it didn't. It was that thought was there, but it wasn't crippling. I would say it did hinder performance or things that happened because, that was on my mind. That's what I was focusing on. But as a, physically crippling, it didn't really get to that. But yeah, um, so some updating for me for that, for naming and labeling more accurately what that difference is, and that thanks Zach, that was what prompted that for me. So thank you, and that explaining of what the clear difference, the difference between that, and that's what that nervousness and worry can then amplify into that anxiousness. So I think a lot of times I'm more nervous and worry, and doesn't usually get to the anxious part. So kind of recall that is a little more difficult when I was anxious, but it's usually doesn't get to that. It's like, okay, what's going on with my nervous on us? Oh, perform. So I'm just worried about doing something. Well, then just go do it. Just get in and go do it, because then you'll get past it. So
Mhm.
yeah, um, yeah. So I give tonight 8.5 for me. It was really really nice on the updating and the clear definitions and what the difference was and the feelings, and then how to move fast or move past that. And I enjoyed the Leslie. That worked out great. The his example, and that was a perfect for tonight.
Mhm.
So thank
Thank you, Brent.
you.
Zach, would you like to give us your wrap up tonight?
Sure. Where do I begin? Um, so many little like big nuggets and then micro nuggets tonight. Oh yeah, the question. Yeah, so actually so about a month ago, I think it was about a month ago now, Blair, I don't know if that was about right, but I actually suffered a panic attack. Anxiety levels got so high it felt almost like a heart attack, but I didn't have a numb arm. So I was like, what the
Okay.
crap is going on? And so the mind model that really helped me was the 3 E's, and specifically the evaluation versus judgment side. Um, I wanted to get to a root cause and fast. And I had to kind of put aside potential judgments of myself in that situation. Because I'm a, I don't know, I'm a tough guy. Okay. I ride a motorcycle, crashed a couple times, got up and walked away. Right. So tough guy having a panic attack. I didn't, my mind wanted to judge, but I didn't. I stuck to evaluation. And that was very, very helpful. And I overcame the scenario very quickly. And obviously, I took the day off and rested and all sorts of things, but that was very, very helpful. So my models are fantastic. Um, okay, so nuggets. So, oof. First off, I have like 5 questions still, but they're they're very deep questions, so we don't have to get into it. It's too late. We'll do it another time, or Blair, you and I sometime.
Well,
Uh,
we're diving back into this. You weren't here, but we are going to do part B of this one on anxiety
oh, good,
because yeah, we basically did less than half of everything that we were planning on doing.
good, good.
Zach, would you mind just sharing what the questions are, even though we won't get to them tonight, so that way I can stay up all night thinking about them?
Yeah, whatever I can do to help you not sleep. All right, so um, first one has to do with naming and labeling. I see the value in naming and labeling. I've used it to gain clarity, and with clarity, I've been able to move forward in a lot of situations. And I do have questions surrounding potentially naming and labeling having power over you to the point of being disempowered. So mostly thinking about anxiety and diagnoses surrounding anxiety and things like that. Can someone label? So, for example, I have ADHD pretty bad. But I don't use it as a crux, but I know people who do and who say, "Well, I can't do that because I have ADHD." So where's the line and the boundary there? It's one of my questions. Second one, what's the root cause of anxiety seemingly becoming more and more of a common occurrence? Potentially, it's like just more connection and internet, social media stuff. Potentially, it's misdiagnoses. I don't know. I'm throwing out ideas. I don't know.
Okay, I can answer this one very quickly. I can go for hours or I can go in like 2 seconds. The two
Okay.
second short answer, well, 5 second short answer is two things. Your socialization with people around us, we're less socialized than we used to be because we're more and more isolated.
Makes
So the
sense.
more isolation we have, the more anxiety we have.
Thank you. Perfect. And then my last big question here, which there's not an immediate answer on this one. How do we help the massive amount of people that do suffer from anxiety? You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. That's just where my brain goes. I know so many people that go through hard times with anxiety and such, and it's like I can help them on an individual basis as best I can with mind models. Um, However, it just feels like I don't know. What are we doing? Where it's like I can't think of a great analogy here, but we're solving this tiny problem with one person when there's a huge, huge issue. And again, I don't expect an answer to that, but it was just a thought that came to mind.
Come next week, we'll deal with that.
Okay, cool. But in terms of let's see. I love the breath work thing. That was really impactful for me. I'm going to be doing that for sure. So thank you, Colin, on that. Putting boundaries on your anxiety, I like that a lot. There's little nuggets here too, like anxiety is being in a past future loop, which replaces the present. I thought that was insightful and very helpful. Um, Yeah, lots of really great things here. Very effective things to reflect on and continue to think about. I would say it's a 9 for me tonight.
Thank you, Zach. Shannon, would you like to give us your wrap up tonight?
Sure. I'm going to ask you a question before I jump into my wrap up because it was one of the things I was just thinking with the wrap up question, like my overarching experience throughout my lifetime in terms of my awareness of anxiety. And I, looking back, can realize I struggled with it a tremendous amount um, as a child, but I didn't have the words for it. And so early on, we talked about, making a choice in doing something alleviates that. And so I connected those two from a very young age. That is just, I just got to push on. And once this is over, I'll feel better. I didn't really think much more deeply on whatever it was that was bothering me. It's just like, oh, I feel this way when I get ready to do this. And if I power forward, it'll be over. And it created a tenacity and a sense of like overcoming just because that's how I'm wired. It's like, all right, let's get it over with and move on. But I haven't really thought, it's only been recently that I've wanted to dive a little bit more deeply into understanding social anxiety. I am specifically tuned into circumstances, like I'm about to do this, or this situation, can have this impact on me in terms of understanding some of my own PTSD and trauma triggers and things like that. But, and I know, Colin, you've talked about this before in the past. Is there a relatively succinct way to describe the difference between social anxiety and like other forms of it? I guess. I don't know if that's my actual question, but it somewhere in there to create more clarity around the difference between social anxiety and other kinds of anxiety.
Using as few words as possible here. Um, I think it relates to what Blair was saying in response to Zach's question before, about the isolation. But, you know, um, I heard someone talking about this at one point, how like our primary environment is not our physical space. It's actually like personalities. Like that's what we engage with most, personalities in our mind, personalities in other people, but we also personify the world. Like we personify the sun, we personify our pets, we personify kind of everything. We interact with personalities. And so in some ways you might say that all anxiety is actually social anxiety. So you kind of flip you might think of social anxiety as a subset of anxiety, but you can also kind of think of it the other way around. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a weird way of like we understand our safety in terms of how we fit within our the personality world that we live in. And so even though someone giving you a weird look isn't the same as someone punching you in the face, literally, oftentimes a weird look is far more scary to us than a punch in the face, which is why, people are more terrified of public speaking than they are of death. It's because it's like there's something even more important to us about relationships than there is about physical life itself in many ways. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It definitely gives me some things to think about, and I'm hoping next week we can dive into some more depth in terms of practical strategies because it is interesting. I think where was it? Oh, Becky, earlier you were saying, anxiety is very general, and to start to get specific around it and break it down, and then you can start to find your action points. And I'm noodling on the difference between like my nervous system is just really overstimulated and there's a lot going on versus am I actually anxious of being around lots of people? and, trying to break some of those things down and get more specific with myself so that I can manage and be more effective with the things that I have on my plate. Um, and I like the flipping it upside down and thinking about it. And it really, I mean, yeah, relationships are incredibly important, and that actually helps it feel appropriately important to figure out how to navigate them effectively. You know what I mean? Like it's something I think we lose touch with because we're all um in a different space with our tasks and our work and things, but to remember that connections and things of that nature are they keep us going. Like, I mean, you know, this community in particular, I was thinking about how many years I've been coming almost every Tuesday night and the different things because my work wanted us all to read a personal growth book before the next staff meeting. And I was like, the things that I choose and do for personal growth have evolved so much over the years, thanks to this community and the types of content that I learn and think about and share versus what my neighbor who's in a different part of their journey is thinking about and learning and sharing. So it's been a really opening, like world enlarging experience to grow and develop with you all. I think that tonight, the breath, the physiological sigh was a huge takeaway. I love learning new things about breathing. Blair, your story about the keys was fascinating. I like practical, tactile situation. Um, and the micro choices, you know, chunking it down, making things more specific. Lots of great takeaways. A time when I overcame anxiety of my own. I think the largest, it's on a scale because there are big anxieties and smaller ones. The most recent large one I had was when I went into the hospital um, for my surgery 9 weeks ago, and having the various touch points to get to where I got. It's like, all right, I can get up in the morning and follow the directions for how much I'm not supposed to eat or drink. Great. I can pack my bag with the things I need. I can walk in the front door and talk to this lady and get checked in. I can, pay the bill. Well, that's debatable, but I can do the different things to get where you need to go. And eventually you wind up laying there and, off you go. And it's framing each tiny little micro step, and it was one of the most pleasant hospital experiences I've ever had. And chunking it down and staying present with the people who were smiling at me and trying to help. And, you know, making sure I'm, speaking up for myself and staying present. So I think the getting to now and trying to think what other mind models. Clarity. Clarity of clarity with self, other, and situation. If we're overlaying clarity with the SOS, I think really helps me. And remembering the desired result and chunking things down with the desired result in mind. That helps me overcome a big mountain of anxiety and break it down from that particular experience. Little ones, though, I guess it's the same process for the little ones as it is the big ones. It's just over faster. So anyway, that is a 9 for me tonight. Thank you.
Cool. You, Shannon. I will call on myself real quick here. This one's a 9.73 for me. Leslie, you're the star of the show tonight for me. I really appreciate you sharing your process. I already kind of spoke to that, but it's valuable, and to see so many different mind models woven in there. Some of them it seemed like you were using very consciously. Some of them it kind of seemed like they've kind of moved into that unconscious competence where you just were using them without even thinking, and that's really cool to see. So thank you for sharing that, and yeah, great engagement from everybody tonight. Just felt like a very balanced. Everybody had something to chip in. And Zach, your questions will keep me up all night, and that's great. So no, they won't. I won't speak that into my future. I'm going to sleep well tonight. But thank you all for that. With that, let's see. I know that Shane, I think he kind of shared beforehand his. Jackie, I see that you're on. Did you want to participate in the wrap up tonight? And I'll take that as a no. If you decide you want to jump in, feel free. Um, and then Becky, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
I will. 9.5 for me. Anxiety has been really fun to chat about the nuances within it. And again, Zach, thank you for posing the question. Is there like what's the difference? What's the magnitude? And I was thinking for myself, kind of holding it in my mind, what was like the felt sense in my body when I think of the word anxiety versus worry. There's definitely a difference in how it shows up. And Leslie, again, thank you for your generosity of spirit and sharing. It was very rich for us to be able to hear your process and be able to see it in real time. So thank you so much for providing that. And again, everybody shares. We all experience anxiety in a different way, or maybe we smush different words in our felt sense of that, resistance to different things. And we covered just a little bit tonight, and I'm excited for next week as we dive a little bit deeper into some other places where this may be showing up. So again, thank you all for sharing and being part of our experience tonight.
Thanks, Becky. Tim, would you like to give us your wrap up?
Yeah, I'd love to. Gonna echo a lot of what's been said. Leslie, thank you for being vulnerable tonight. Hearing your process and walking through that, uh, just massive. A lot of times anxiety can feel like it's never ending. And the fact that you walked through that in just, a matter of hours, especially with all the things that you had going on with the holiday and family and everything, just really speaks to how far you've come, your process, and how quickly these mind models can shift and help us work through situations. So, again, yeah, has been shared MVP of the night, like your story, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. That was definitely a highlight of tonight's BDE. And then Zach, again, your question that you posed earlier, I think and with the question that's been posed of time that you worked through anxiety and the mind models that you used, I think about when Becky and I first started speaking for groups on stage, for small groups, one-on-one, like it was all this anxiety, and I'm like, I'm anxious, like, and I did feel suffocated and stuck, and like somebody was holding me down, and all these things, and it was interesting. Um, I started asking, so what am I actually feeling? So describing feelings was one of, the big mind models that I first started asking, is describing feelings and naming and labeling. And what came down out of that process was really, it was just nervous excitement. I was a little nervous and I was excited all at the same time. And then, evaluation versus judgment went through there as well, safety versus comfort. Like I think about all these mind models that came in, real versus reality, and some other mind models that came in there. But once I started working through the process of asking myself these questions, and just testing as well. The other thing that we talk about here a lot, and I know my wife loves this, but it starts with T and ends with T, and just actually testing and getting up and doing things, actually taking action, which is another highlight of tonight. The breathing techniques that Colin shared, extremely helpful. And then Blair, your counting technique. Those things, when we actually do the physical behaviors and we take and bring ourselves present and work through it, and we do it over and over again, we keep practicing. It's amazing how quickly we can work through things. And come out the other side. And the more we do it, just the faster and more resilient we become. So, and that's what's happened for me as I've, these speaking engagements, like, they're not nearly as big a deal as they used to be. And it's because I'm working through the questions and asking myself, these things before prepping, and then being able to do actually an evaluation after instead of judging myself. So it's been very helpful. Um, With that, tonight's a 975 for me.
Thank you, Tim. Becky, did you want to share that one out loud?
Real quick, I didn't answer the question.
Oh.
So, what's one time you overcame anxiety? For me, anytime I look at the weather or I hear rain outside, I run myself through safety versus comfort. So, what's actually going on? Am I physically safe or am I just uncomfortable? 99.9999% of the time, it's severe discomfort. And then I walk myself through naming and labeling. What is it that I'm feeling? What do I know about what I'm feeling? And then self other situation. And it typically brings me down quite quickly to be able to move on with what it is I need to get done.
Thanks again, Becky. Patty, would you like to share your wrap up tonight?
Sure. Thinking about anxiety, because I don't think of myself as an anxious person. But I was in a meeting today, and someone labeled me as anxious. And it came to me right out of the blue. And it sent me one thing we didn't cover much tonight that we'll get into more next week, is how does the why hole relate to anxiety? And when I was labeled by someone else as being anxious, I could feel my body falling into that hole. I could feel like, well, why is she saying that to me? You know, and then I was able to be present enough to say, I don't perceive that in myself. But the more that I've been looking at it, the more I'm thinking, yeah, I probably was anxious. And looking at that name and label then opens the door for the path to come out of it. Without being able to name it, um, for me, the mind models, before I was able to kind of dial into that, it was getting out of why. I could recognize myself as being in a why. I could feel it in my gut and in my chest, and that yicky feeling that somebody got something on me that I didn't ask for. Um, and so getting out of why is a really big one. And then getting to now, what's going on right now, and getting myself present. That helped an awful lot. And then I move into the 3 E's. Was that effective for me? Is where I'm at right now effective for me? You know, am I internal? Am I external? Am I judging myself? All of those things that then take me out of that. So that was an experience that lasted, the felt sense probably lasted for about 3 hours. And then moving through, moving on, moving past, going forward. So this is really powerful stuff. For me tonight, it was a 9.5. And Leslie, I know you're tired of hearing it by now, but well done, you. That was just such a powerful addition. And you provided us an example to use as a reference and something to walk through and look at and identify, and in real time. And that was so valuable. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Patty. Blair, would you like to wrap up the wrap up?
Sure. Um, I've been going through a lot of things that were or that are potentially um, anxiety riddled with anxiety, potentially. Losing my VA has given me moments of um, worry and anxiety. The more that I evaluate and the more that I don't mislabel where I'm at, because one of the things, Zach, one of your questions that I was sort of saving part of this is how come there appears to be more anxiety in the world? Well, I gave you the quick and dirty, but the other one is there's a ton of mislabeling that's going on. where if people could discern the difference between anxiety, worry, and frustration, um, and nervousness, and a whole bunch of others, if you could literally discern it and do it, you don't um, blow up the moment into something and make it something bigger than what it, pardon me, than what it is. And that's critical. We when I talk to people with phobias, fears, anxieties, and PTSD, a lot of the people that have been literally labeled with PTSD, when I've seen people who have full-blown PTSD, and it's a big deal, it's a big deal. Um, I'm not minimizing that at all or trying to pretend that it isn't. But then I see other people who are getting on with their life and they are tending to utilize PTSD as their problem and holding that up as the thing that is allowing them to bail on life, to not move forward. I was working with one gentleman a while ago trying to test out my um, process for PTSD on a number of individuals. And he started to get control of it. And all of a sudden, his numbers started reversing as we did more of that, and it started to go back up. But I could hear in the tone of his voice and in how he was processing that he was actually judging and not evaluating. He was judging me, training him, and it didn't work to what he'd had in the past. So he was somebody who had a support dog, an emotional support dog that was rapidly getting out of his model of the world, which was his employer actually was his job was to help people with PTSD find a way out of it. But when he was finding a way out of it, he refused to get out because he'd potentially unravel a whole lot of his life. And we name and label ourselves as our disability sometimes. And that one is very difficult. Uh, you know, life skills was huge for me seeing those issues where people become their their disability, especially if it's mental health related. It's very hard to see the disability, but it's easy to explain because we're all taught about, this is what it is. We can spout a definition and say, this is me, but are you actually living it? Or are you actually sort of co-creating it so that it fits your model of the world and your expectation of yourself? Now, does that mean that it's not true? No, of course it isn't. It is very true. But some people don't really want to get out of their stuckness because it holds them in a place that actually is working for them. So we have to be very cautious. I need to be very cautious not to wreck somebody's model of the world when their model of the world is needed for their employment, their life, how they are. Um, Fortunately, that's not true for many people, but it is true for some. And I need to be aware of that. And for me, becoming disabled without having sent around, like my disability was losing my VA. Well, okay, what might I be able to do? Well, I shared it with friends and I immediately got two valid people to help me replace fill my gap. And out of the blue, I got a third one. So yeah, and Zach, I have one for you too. Yes, thank you. But I got, Jessica volunteered and came in at doesn't cost me any more or any less to hire her than what I was paying. So that's extremely beneficial, and I get buy-in from somebody that I need. Now, I am also working hard at not allowing my concern, my worry, my nervousness. I'm going to be having my second hip replaced on Friday, so 2 days from now. So that is a concern. But one of the things that I keep on doing is I am now walking around my place without a cane, without crutches, without anything. And I am doing that very, very effectively. I'm now able to do my squats, which I could barely do for 15 seconds, for a full minute. An isometric squat, three different times, well, sitting like back to the wall and that invisible chair, and you just stay there for a minute. And then doing two other forms of squats. One is a horse squat with your toes forward, sort of like in the saddle, and the other one is a sumo squat where your legs are wider and your toes are out at 45 degrees. I can do all three of those at 1 minute, where 3 weeks ago when I started this, it was impossible for me. Well, not impossible. I managed to do it for 10 seconds on one of them and 15 seconds on another two. So I was able to do that. But I'm evaluating and going, hold it, that's very rapid. That's 3 weeks. And look at the shift. And it's been 4 months to 2 days or 3 days ago. From the 11th of this month, it's now the 14th. So on the 11th of this month, it was 4 months. And look at how fast I'm basically back, you know, to being almost fully recovered in a short period of time. So forcing myself to look at what is working, not what isn't working, is there. So anyway, guys, that's it. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Blair. And Becky, did you want to share the announcements to close us out?
I will. All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us again. Thank you for your shares. Again, this is meant to be an experience as it was tonight. What you bring to the calls, what you share, what you're open with, how you're using mind models, and so that we can work through it in real time is really what makes the BDE special. Couple announcements again. We were only able to cover a very small bit of what we prepared tonight, so we're going to go deeper next week. But in addition to that, this is not a uncommon practice where we prep for a lot, we go where the conversation goes, but there's a lot left that we are not able to get into. So if you want to have that enhanced learning, Blair's put together the BDE Insider Notes. It starts from episode 318, moving onward again. Today was 366, so there's a lot there. You can get access to that for $25 a month or $300 a year by going to blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes. Definitely encourage you to do so because, again, the information is powerful. But being able to see how it works in your own world is where that next level comes in. So we encourage you to get the insider notes and then come join us on the BDE so you can ask your questions so that you can have an experience in real time and see how they might actually apply in your world. You can ask the questions much like Zach and other people do. This is a learning environment. We're here to help you become more effective in whatever area makes sense for you or you're wanting to as well. Special announcement. This is hot off the press. We just found out about it. And we're super, super excited. There's going to be a mind model method coach training in person in Arizona. Location to be determined, but the dates, mark your calendar, set the time away. January 5th through 8th and 13th through 16th. If you want more details, contact Blair and he can get that for you. Again, it's going to be a great experience. We've been able to be in person for a Mind Model Method Coach training. We've also been virtually. This is an incredible opportunity if you're wanting to sharpen the axe, increase your skill sets, applicable to any and all areas of life. Probably one of the most effective investments that Tim and I have made to date because of the utility. Highly recommend that if that's something that you're looking for, to contact Blair for that.
And I'm just going to say really quick, like the virtuals are great, but there is nothing like being in person, being actually able to interact, engage face to face. It's a really amazing experience. So if you can make it live, this is the one.
Okay, mark your calendars, January 5th through 8th, 13th through 16th. Reach out to Blair for more details, and more will be coming as well. Also, Blair has very generously, continuously provided information for us, opportunities for us to learn. He's got 2 books out right now on Amazon, Ultimate Mind Hacking and Phobia Freedom Formula. You can go to the URL there or Google Blair Dunkley on Amazon and be able to get your hands on those. Highly recommend them. Again, mind models are a way to increase their speed of effectiveness, shortcut recovery times, and again, it's applicable and identifiable, duplicatable, and repeatable to any and all areas of life. Definitely recommend that you get your hands on those if you have not yet. And again, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for the last 90 minutes. We are here every single Tuesday night at 7 Mountain, right?
Yep.
9 Eastern. I'm in a different time zone, so it's catching me off guard today. And we look forward to seeing you next week, where we were going to dive a little bit deeper into our conversation about anxiety tonight. Appreciate you all. Again, thanks for coming out and spending your evening with us, and have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever it is you're tuning in from. If you're on YouTube, please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. We'd love to be able to interact with you and have that level of connection on that platform as well. Have a good night.